You're listening to Big Ray's Garage Grind.
I want to bring awareness and my voice to something that's meaningful and purposeful, more than just who's the best football player or who's the best football team.
The intersection between life, football, and mental health.
When you need help and you ask for help, you're operating from a position of power. When you need help and you don't ask for help, that's the weakness.
Now, here's your host, Seahawks legend, Ray Roberts.
What up, family? This is Big Ray with Big Ray's Garage Grind Mental Health Edition, brought to you by the Mindful Therapy Group. And just want to make one quick announcement that this is probably going to be it is going to be the last podcast in this platform, I guess, if that's what we want to call it. We'll be moving to another platform, doing a few different things, different sponsors possibly, but do want to say thank you to the Seahawks and to the Mindful Therapy Group for being sponsors of it. And, the Seahawks giving me the space and the time, this room, the recording, NASA doing what he does with the production part of it, Edwin, who was early involved with some of the recording of it, all the folks that were part of the very first couple episodes that we recorded way back when. It's just been really cool for me because this is something that is super important to me. This is probably one of my number one passion in my life right now, is this work around mental health and mental health awareness and wellness, and just really trying to understand what it is and giving people the freedom to seek, or empowering people to be locked into what they're feeling and why they're feeling it, and where to find help and how to find help. That they're going to be okay, that they're not broken, that there's not a malfunction in how they move or live or think or what have you. So it's been a really cool outlet for me. I've looked forward to it. It's been it's given me some other opportunities to do some cool things around Washington and the city here, being parts of different events and appearances and things around mental health, and just being able to spread the word. And then also the fans and listeners that I've seen just in the street, at games, coming up and talking about their own mental health struggles or battles, or how the podcast has helped them in some way. There's been at least a handful of people that have acknowledged to me that they've actually gone on and found a therapist through the Mindful Therapy Group to kind of help with some of the stuff they were dealing with. There was one individual that just, I want to say last week, let me know that he was motivated. He had let me know during the season that he was motivated by the podcast to pursue a career in mental health and therapy. And then he sent me a message probably 3 days ago that he actually got into, I think, Oregon State's program to start to pursue his license to practice. And so those are the types of wins that I know that some of them we didn't hear, but those are some of the ones that we did hear that make you proud that you're part of this, that you're able to change someone's life or motivate someone in a different way, or give just enough of a nudge to someone that was thinking about something and doing it, and then they went ahead and did it because of the podcast. So it's been really, really cool to be part of that and to have those conversations, and to also just let people see another side of me, of who I am. This big, huge dude that played professional football and tough and all this other kind of things. But, man, we struggle and have issues like everybody else. And so just trying to find a way to do my part in helping people get the help that they need. And in turn, it kind of helps me kind of fill, some buckets in my life to make me feel a little bit, feel better and feel like I'm being productive in my community. Today's episode is going to be, I feel like these are the most notes I've ever had for any one podcast. And I don't know that I'm going to get to all of them, but I just wanted to make sure they were here in front of me so that I could hit on some of the things that I wanted to hit on. And I will say that, man, the climate in our country has been really strange, and for a number of reasons. We've had the natural disasters with the fires in California and all the loss of property and life and security and sense of your being and where you are. We have the hurricanes in Florida and North Carolina, specifically in Asheville, North Carolina, which is my hometown. Was just back there a month or so ago, and man, parts of the town still looks like a third world country or like a war-torn space. There are actually concrete slabs, like complete just flat slabs, where actually 2 or 3 high-story buildings used to be. I pulled up to this one red light, and I realized that the water line on the building beside me was above where the lights were hanging. So that's how high the water was. And so it was. We've had those types of disasters, and I'm sure there's other ones that have occurred, but those are the big ones that I can remember. And then just more recently, we've had the plane. We've probably had 5 plane crashes in the last 6 weeks that have just been really impactful around the country and created a sense of fear and anxiety and angst and all those types of things. We've had a change in leadership that in our country that has created lots of emotions for everybody, no matter what party or race or gender or culture you identify with. There's a lot of tension in the air. There's a lot of just emotional, ready, like things that are ready to explode emotionally. It doesn't matter what side you're on, what side of the argument, support, not support, for it, against it, whatever it is. There's just a lot of emotion going on. And so today I thought that I'd try to talk about some things that maybe are tools and maybe not as resources as much, but tools and ways to think about how to navigate all of this stuff so that you can keep your peace and not get lost in a lot of it emotionally and mentally. And so it made me think about this whole idea first of emotional regulation. And emotional regulation is basically just being able to either before you're triggered by something, being able to kind of calm yourself in a way that you can control your emotions, or if you've been triggered, like what are some of the things that there's a way that you can still calm your emotions even though you've been triggered. So, and then the opposite of that would be dysregulation. And the thing that made me start thinking about it is, my girlfriend and I have been doing some couples therapy, and the main thing that popped up for both of us was this idea around emotional regulation. And I started thinking about it through this mental health lens. But first of all, emotional regulation is so impactful in so many areas of our life. It's in relationships, whether they're romantic or friends or what have you, and how we respond to things that are happening in the world. The ability to regulate the emotions can go a long way towards protecting your mental health, protecting your relationships, your friendships, what have you. And as we're doing this work, we all realize that growing up, like, more than likely you were not in a household where adults were modeling emotional regulation. Like, I know in my family, it was pretty chaotic, and we just argue until whoever stopped arguing first would be the person that lost, whether they had a good point or not. And so just a lot of screaming and yelling and sometimes fighting. And as a result of that, man, like, that is probably some of the root of the trauma of that I went through, that kind of developed some of these things that I've struggled with as life went on. And so this idea around emotional regulation is powerful because you have a chance to model to the people around you and the people you love how to deal with conflict, how to deal with things that trigger you, how to deal with those types of things. And so it's amazing how nothing in your life works in a vacuum. We like to think that, hey, this one thing happened to me this one time, and in that moment, that's the only impact it had. But you don't account for the tentacles that those things have and how it reaches in to other areas of your life. In the very first episode of this podcast, I talked a lot about what it was like growing up in my house and how my parents fought and argued and drank and all these different kinds of things. And because of that, like, I've created or developed a mentality and ways to deal with things that at an early age that became how I dealt with them my whole entire life. And then eventually some of those came back, to bite me in the butt and impacted my life in ways that I didn't expect. But then, having to go through therapy and all these kinds of things to heal some of that stuff back in the past was really helpful. But one of the things that would have really, really helped was this idea around emotional regulation. I just felt if I felt it, then I can express it however I wanted to express it because I had the freedom to do that regardless of how it might be impacting the person I'm talking to or the people around me. And sometimes that showed up in how I played football. Like I said, when I first got to Virginia, man, I fought every other day. Like there was something that someone would do that would trigger me that would just say like, well, okay, well then the next best thing for me to do was punch him in the face. And that's what I would do. And so just lots and lots of fights in college to the point where the head coach, George Welsh, rest in peace, called my dad and was like, why does this dude fight all the time? And part of it was because I had all of these emotions and things. I didn't know how to regulate them. And so when something got triggered, and the player across from me may not even have known that they triggered me, but I was triggered and I thought, oh, well, I have this feeling and this is how I'm going to express this feeling, this emotion. And on that playing field or in that situation, a lot of times it helped me because I got to just unleash all of this anger and frustration and things I didn't know how to manage. I just got to unleash it on other people. And a lot of times you get a pat on the back for that on the football field. And so there were times though where it did get out of hand. Like I've been kicked out of about 7 NFL football games. And so in those situations, it impacted my team and it impacted my wallet. And then, it does impact your relationships in a way because my wife at the time is going like, dude, like what is wrong with you? And I didn't know how to express what it was. It was just like I felt it and I felt like that was the right thing to do in the moment and I did it. And so that is part of the dysregulation because there were things that are going on that have been triggered that I couldn't control. Now, some of it is just like, I would have to say, I don't know, maybe 60% of them though were like, I got to send a message to somebody. And whether I'm trying to, create energy for our team or for myself or just send a message to the person across from me that whatever they were trying to do that day wasn't going to happen, then that it just those things had to happen. I put it that way. But it did speak to a little bit of emotional dysregulation. And so I know I've had a couple coaches, at the time that were just like, they could see it, that I was getting to that place and they would have me on the sideline, calm down, Ray, it's going to be okay. Like, don't worry about it. Move on to the next play. And I could not let it go. And then I go right out on the next series, punch someone in the face, get kicked out of the game. And then that was that. So this idea around emotional regulation is a powerful one. And so the thing is learning to first understand what your triggers are, that make your emotions get to a place to where they're explosive, and then finding strategies to try to then control those in a way that then you can express what you're feeling or what you're thinking or what's going on without bringing harm to yourself or to the relationship or to the people around you. Because, like I said, we have these big explosive moments and we feel justified in those moments, but man, there's so much hurt going on. And so you can say like, well, what does one have to do with the other? Well, you can feel bad for, once you look back on it and see what you've done and how it may have impacted people. And that can, make you go to a stressful place. It can make you go to a depressive place. It can make you go to an anxious place. And all those things are mental health places that can then impact how you're living, how you're working, how you're showing up in a relationship. And then the person, there's guilt if you feel like you've gone a little bit too far with the person that you've exploded on from a emotional perspective there, and then how do they feel, and how have you impacted them, and then how does that quote unquote trauma show up in your relationship? Are they afraid then to approach you about certain topics, or they're afraid to bring up certain things that maybe they don't like that you're doing, or things that are going on in the relationship? And so it creates an emotional or mental unhealthiness in a relationship when you are not able to really truly regulate your emotions. And like I said, there's 2 different ways that emotional regulation show up. One is controlling your emotions before they are fully emerged. So you know that there are triggers, that something that may trigger you. So going into let's say you're going into a conversation with someone and you know that they're however they communicate or what they're going to say may be one of those triggers. So then that's when you become aware of that and you do whatever necessary um, uh, practices or things you have to do to keep yourself calm in a way that you can hear and communicate. And then the other one is kind of I think it's called like a response focused regulation, which means that you've already been triggered, and then in the moment of being triggered, you're able to find um, things that help you kind of bring down the emotion a little bit, so that you can take a step back, listen, hear, and then communicate. And so, to me, just thinking through some of that stuff, in these call on these coaching calls with my girlfriend, just really kind of helps me start to understand how this emotional regulation thing also shows up with mental health. And so the when we talk about triggers, sometimes triggers are like the brain's what do you want to call it? Your brain's like emotional alarm system. And it's like, and when they get triggered, it's like the firehouse alarm going off. It's like your alarm going off in the morning. It moves, it awakens. It kind of puts you into this fight or flight or freeze response. And depending on your personality, you're going to do one of those three things. I tend to kind of float between fighting and then also just retreating, and where I just kind of freeze and do nothing. And sometimes that's me just walking away or what have you, removing myself from the conversation. And then the other part is that I always like to say that you go to this dinosaur brain place where your brain becomes really, really small and your ability to think things through becomes impaired because you're so heightened at a level that you can't really think straight. And so you become really impulsive and then reactionary, and that really challenges and can really destroy what is going on in those moments, whether you're responding to something in a relationship, or you're responding to something that you're seeing on TV, or you're responding to whatever the culture and the climate is in our country right now around some of the things that are going on. You can get to a place where you feel like what your response is automatic, and because it's automatic, you're thinking that must be the right response. But a lot of times you're operating from this space where I like to call it like dinosaurs are huge, or huge animals, but a lot of them had really small brains. And so like we're operating from that really small dinosaur brain. And then the other part of it is, our nervous system. Your nervous system gets activated. And for me, a lot of times when my nervous system gets activated and then I go into this emotional alarm system place, it's something that's connected to what happened to me, my life growing up. I have enough knowledge and awareness now to know, like, oh, okay, what I'm feeling right now is connected to that thing back there. And then the way I look at it is I go like, okay, now adult Ray needs to speak to little Ray, because little Ray is the one that experienced all that type of trauma growing up. And when I allow little Ray to take over the adult Ray, that's when I get to the place where I get explosive. I do things I regret. I say things I regret, and all those types of things. So then it's important for the adult Ray in the room to take charge and speak to the little Ray when that nervous system has been triggered. And so the thing that's important around emotional regulation is you have to rewire that. And so the adult Ray speaking to the little Ray is part of the rewiring, the going to therapy and finding my therapist and my person that I can have these conversations with, that can help me smoke out and realize some of these things that are happening in my life, so that I can rewrite, the script that's going on in my head. And in therapy, actually, that is where, when I left and went to the mindful therapy, I mean, not the mindful therapy group, the after the impact program the NFL sent me to in Michigan, probably week 3-ish out of 4 weeks being there, 32 days being there, I was going for a walk, and one day it just came to my attention that where I was struggling was in this rewiring, this rewriting the story. I kept reliving the same story over and over and over. And in clinical terms, I think they would call that cognitive distortions. So I was believing things that happened in my past were still happening right now, and they were impacting how I was responding to things, whether it was internally or externally. So then I had to then figure out, well, then how do I rewrite the script? And the one way I did it was every morning I got up and I would write all these affirmations, and I've covered this before in the very first episode. I would say, like, hey, I'm a good person. I'm great at my job. Here are the people that love me, and I would list, all my family and my kids, and even the guys on the broadcast team. I know that they love and care for me, and so it was like a reminder that I'm not. Even though there are times when you are alone or you're choosing to be in solitude, and you can feel as if you're on the whole face of the planet all by yourself. And so these types of affirmations help me rewrite the script to know that, like, even though in this moment I might be physically by myself or I might be mentally by myself, but I'm not alone, because I know that I had all these other people and I knew these other things that were true about me. And so part of that rewriting the script is to be curious about the story that you're telling yourself. And it's weird. I don't know how to explain it, but to me, there's a difference between being curious and questioning. I feel like questioning, when you question why you're feeling a certain way or why you're doing a certain thing, judgment comes with that. But when you're curious, it's almost as if you're taking it and you're sitting it on the table and you're looking at it from outside your body, going, like, I wonder what's going on right here. Why am I feeling a certain way? Why is that thought like popping into my head? What is it that about this situation I'm going into or coming out of, or this conversation I'm about to have or not have? Like, what is it about that that's causing me to have this panic or this anxiety or distress or what have you? And so you look at it from outside in versus questioning yourself from the inside and questioning your motives. So it just removes the judgment in that way for me. And so to me, that's a big part. That the awareness part is a lot. It's not easy to do. It takes a lot of work. And I would say, I mean, you could possibly do it on your own, but having a therapist to help you walk through it and answer questions and even give you some tools and resources on how to do that is a big example. And one of the things that I think about a lot when I think about this whole idea of these conversations you have with yourself is when I coached football at Lake Washington High School, we had this one player who was growing up in a tough situation, and his actions were what people were always responding to. And because of his actions, people were telling me that he shouldn't be on the football team. And so I said, you know what? That's the one dude I came here for. Like, that was the reason I coached. If you look at my record, we didn't win many games, but I say that I grew a lot of men for other people because that was my intention being there. And so after really getting to know this kid, really helped him rewrite his script about what his life is and what it's not, and what's the reality of it and what's not the reality of it, and then what are his opportunities and what are not opportunities. And I think by helping him rewrite the script for himself, this dude just became a different guy. And probably about halfway through the season, our seniors came to us and said, hey, we want this guy to be a captain on the team. He had changed that much. And then I think I told this story before, but years later, I get this text message, and there's this guy with this big beard. I didn't recognize his face and everything. And he said, Coach, I finally get it. And I was like, I don't even know who this is. And because I didn't recognize him. And he said, hey, this is such and such. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how are you doing? And he was like, I finally get it. I understand what it is you were trying to tell me and help me see. And at that point, he had already applied to like med school and was gonna practice or study to be a doctor. And I thought it was amazing because this was a kid that when I first came into school, one of the very first conversations I had was, don't have this kid on the team. And so it was just pretty cool to be able to help him rewrite the script for himself in a way that he could see the positive that he brought to the world, and that he could see just how dynamic and a great a person he is. And so this idea around rewriting the script and like being self-aware, there's so much that goes on in our country, in our communications, in our leadership, and whether you're leading a country or leading a sports team or you're leading an organization, where self-awareness is just lacking. And so it puts you in a place to say things and do things and make decisions in a way that you're not aware of your own blind spots and things. And so, or you're responding from your own script that you've written for yourself, and it's impacting the people around you. So this idea around self-awareness is an important piece of emotional regulation. Um, like I said, I start to then think about, you know, the example that I've set for my kids. And I can't say that I've always been the best at it, but I do think more recently, especially since going and to the After the Impact program and just really doing some real deep dive work on myself, I think I've been able to model for them a different person and a different way to do it and a different way to think about it. And the way that I know that is that more times than not now, my kids come to me for advice, or they come to me with difficult conversations. I had my middle son, Slade, called me up, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago, and said, and this is what is really cool. And he just said, "Hey, Dad, like, I'm almost 26 years old, or 25, 26 years old, and I think it's time for us to have man-to-man conversations instead of man to, father to son conversations." And to me, that was like a win, because to me, I had done something right. I had modeled something well enough that he felt comfortable enough to have these types of conversations with me. And I thought that was pretty cool, because I don't know, early in my fatherhood, that I was setting an example that would make myself approachable that way. And but I'm glad that I was able to recover and do that. But I think a lot of that, like I said, is built around this whole emotional regulation thing. So I'd like to give you just a few tips on how to regulate your emotions. And one is, I used to do this formula, and it was S and then these two parentheses, so a space, and then R. So S was the stimuli. So whatever it is that's triggering you, the conversation, the person, the situation, whatever it is. And then there was space and then a response. And the cool thing that in that space is basically like a pause. So you're going to pause before responding, because in the pause is all those things. So the relationship, the job opportunity, the emotional safety, the mental health, it's all wrapped up in the pause. How you handle that space between the parentheses. So S space R. We can call it a T. So trigger, space, and then response. And so in that space is where you can calm down and do some of these practices. So the first one is to take that actual pause and not just skip right over it to the response. And then in that pause, reframe your thinking. So instead of you may feel like you're being attacked, but you may not be. The attack may not be on you personally, but it may be on an action that you took or a decision that you made. And so you have to be able to separate your person from that and look at the problem as if it was sitting on the table. So reframe your thinking. And then there's a physical piece too. So in that pause, maybe you need to just say, like, "Hey, can I come back to this? And I need to, go take a walk. I need to go listen to some music. I need to go do some breathing." There's different breathing techniques you can do. There's one where you inhale for 7 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 8 seconds. There's another one that's called like box breathing, where it's like, I think you do the same thing, but it's in 8 seconds intervals. So there's all different types of things to help kind of reduce the angst or the fight or flight or freeze thing that's happening. And then also there's like mindfulness and meditation that can go on. I remember when I played at UVA, we had this one former player that was in the Air Force, and he flew like several missions in the Desert Storm attacks, or what do we want to call that? Desert Storm. What do you want to call it? I don't want to say attacks. That sounds like hard. But anyway, during Desert Storm. And he sent us this thing, and he said that he would do like at least 100 push-ups before he got into his plane because his emotions and things were so on point that that if he got into his plane going hundreds of miles an hour, that he could make a mistake, possibly kill himself, or not complete the mission or what have you. And so in that situation, he was doing finding emotional regulation in that response or in that situation, so he could respond in the right way. So that's a different type of an example, but it's a way to demonstrate that the exercise, doing something physical, can help bring down the emotions and things. The other part you can do in that space is you can journal or do some self-reflection. So write down it. I find sometimes when I'm kind of in those spaces that if I can just write out what I'm thinking, sometimes the better way to respond just comes to me automatically because I'm doing the all out, but on paper and not to the person or to the situation. And in my journaling, I get enlightened and go like, yeah, I probably shouldn't respond this way, and this is the way I should respond, or oh, this is what I'm missing in what this person is saying to me, or what the situation is saying, or what the situation is calling for. I'm missing that, and it helps me find that piece that can unlock everything. And then the other part in that space between the trigger and the response is therapy or coaching. I'd like to say that the work that we're doing in this couples work is part of that pause, because we were going straight from stimulus or trigger right to response, and it was not serving our relationship well. And so now we found space. We created space for us to kind of work on how to respond, how to receive information, how to process the information, where some of the responses are coming from for each other. So in between those parentheses are all those things that you can do. And sometimes it doesn't mean that you get to be triggered, have the pause, and respond in the same day. So sometimes you got to take that trigger and take that pause moment to say, I'll be back at you in 24 hours. Give me 24 hours to think about this, to do the physical thing, or to do the reframing, or to do the journaling, or to seek support, coaching, and then I want to respond, because then your response will be more productive that way. And then your ability to control the anxiety and the stress that you may be feeling will also help control the anxiety and the stress that the other person or the situation may be feeling. So those are some, to me, if you can remember that formula. And so I just thought about the trigger part of it, but I always put the S and then the space and then the R. So it was stimuli, space, pause, all those different things that I just gave you, and then respond. And so that's the formula. I have a couple dudes that I was in therapy with at After the Impact program, and one of them is like the second coming of Samuel L. Jackson in all the really cool movies, where he can just go on these F-bomb drop rants. I mean, like, forever. And I just go like, dude, like, you are not doing yourself any favors or anybody else any favors when you go to that place. So when he texts me and I can tell he's in that ramped up place, I just send that formula to him, S space R. And I say, man, go hang out in the space for a little bit before you respond to whoever it is you're responding to that way. So emotional regulation, even though it seems like something that's more impactful for like relationships and your communications with other people, it is also important with the communication that you're having with yourself, and then the ramifications from some of those interactions you have with other people or situations when you're super explosive, and then you live with regret, and then that causes stress, anxiety, depression, all these different kinds of things. So being able to control your emotions and have strategies for it. And like, for me, sometimes the thing I've become more, I want to say, aware of, and that I've done more of, is when I know for sure that I'm going to go into a conversation or I'm going to go into a situation where there's going to be triggers all over the place. I prepare myself beforehand. And sometimes I'm able to go into the situation and be good, But sometimes I have to just tell myself when I get triggered, because I know I'm going to get triggered, that, okay, when I get triggered, instead of responding, go live in the pause and then find time to do some exercise or journal or do all those kinds of things. So I do that beforehand. I already make the decision before I get into it, because once I get into it and I haven't made those decisions, I can't guarantee you that any of that stuff I just told you is going to work. And I can't say that I've been, that I bat 1,000 with any of this. I'm just saying to hedge my bets towards being more successful with it, so that I don't come out of the situation causing harm, emotional harm to someone else or to myself. I try to make sure I'm prepared before I go into it. And so that's what I'm telling you to do, is the same thing. So I know I hope that there was a few little resources in there for you guys to grab onto. It was a little bit, I remember when Twitter first started, I used to do these things called Ray's Rants. And that kind of felt like a Ray rant a little bit, because thoughts I had. But the Mindful Therapy Group, based in the Pacific Northwest, is a diverse group of qualified mental health professionals or providers offering both in-person and virtual care. Whether it's talk therapy or medication management, you can book your first visit within 1 week. Visit mindfultherapygroup.com to start your journey to better mental health today. And I will say that I've gotten to know the founders of the Mindful Therapy Group, Jessica and Derek, and every now and then I slip up and I call them Derica, because it's our little inside joke. But they are great people, and they're doing great work for people all around the country, representing therapists that are bringing this type of care to a bunch of different types of communities. And so I just always want to give them a shout out. They've been big supporters of mine. Derek and I have some pretty cool, deep conversations. He's a really cool dude to talk to and hang out with. So shout out to the Mindful Therapy Group. This last part, this next or second section that I want to talk about a little bit is more mental health focused around the things that are just happening, in our culture, in our country right now, with some of the conversations that are going on, with some of the decisions that are being made, some of the resources and things that are being under attack. And, whether you agree or disagree, like I said, some of the emotion and stuff around it is pretty intense. Some people's jobs are being threatened. And I just want to say that it's okay to not allow the conversation of the day, the topic of the day, the press conference of the day, the news of the day, to be overwhelming. And if it is, you're not alone in that. But I will say it's okay, just like we just talked about, being triggered and in the space and in the response, it's okay to remove yourself from that. It's okay to not allow yourself to be overwhelmed by it. So it's okay to take a step back. It's okay to recharge. It's okay to protect your peace in it. And in doing that, there's just a few little, I'm going to call them mental health tips that I want to give. And I share this with our team at Special Olympics too, is that the first thing you have to do is acknowledge and validate your feelings. So it's okay to feel what you're feeling. And no one can tell you that what you're feeling is not real. What you're feeling is real. Now, you might get more information that then allows you to go like, okay, well, there was no need for me to feel that. So like the one thing I try to compare it to is if you're afraid of dark and you're in the dark, your feelings are fear and fright and scared. But if someone in the room said, hey, like, there's no one in the room here but me and you, or they turn the lights on and you get more information that you're safe, then the feeling of fear and all that kind of stuff kind of goes away. But the initial feeling is real. And sometimes we run across people that go like, oh, that's not a feeling, or you shouldn't be feeling that, or the feelings don't matter, or all those kinds of things, or it's not real. The feeling is real. And it doesn't have to be the same feeling that someone else in that situation feels. It's what you are feeling in that moment. And then you can then either choose to yourself feed it more information so that you can not feel those things, or you get more information from the actual situation that it is or isn't what you're thinking. So always acknowledge and validate the feelings, because I feel like when you try to resist what you're feeling is when things just get amplified. And sometimes just saying it out loud almost releases it to the universe and takes it in and out of your body. I kind of compare it to when you stub your toe in the middle of the night and you grab your toe and you feel like you're trying to hold the pain in, but it's when you release it that the pain just moves through your body and it actually goes away faster. So acknowledge and validate your feelings. And then the second thing would be focus on what you can control, because there are some things that are going to happen and decisions that are being made that are completely out of your control. And frankly, there's nothing you can do about it. And so you have to control what you can control, and you can't control every policy or public opinion. And you don't have to, you don't have to give those things power in your life because you can't control them. So focus on the small, meaningful things that you can control. So you can, look at some of these things that are happening and say, okay, then if these are the rules of the game, how can I accomplish what I want to accomplish using these different rules? Because you can probably do that. And the one thing I think about is when I was doing our master's program over at the University of Washington, Intercollegiate Athletic Leadership, we had Bill Russell come and talk to us. And it was really interesting because he was like one of the first players that were blocking shots. And so someone asked him about why did he start blocking shots? And he said, well, I looked at the rules, and the rules said I couldn't block the ball on its downward path to the goal. So what that told me is that I can block it on its upward path to the goal. And so then that's what I did. And then all of a sudden he kind of normalized this idea around blocking shots. So he took the rules that said this is what you cannot do, and he looked at what the rules told you he could do. And so even in this climate that we're in right now, where there's a lot of things going on and changes and policies and all these different kinds of things, even the rules that tell you what you can't do are also telling you what you can do. And a lot of times in those situations, you can still accomplish the things that you want to accomplish, even though the rules may be saying something else. The other thing I will say, the number 3, so we had acknowledge and validate your feelings. Number 2 was focus on what you can control. And then number 3 was protect your energy. So when I say that, and I had to do this myself, is because I can get super energized in what I believe, and then I get ignited, and then I can't stop. I get really dogged at it, and I want to respond to every tweet I see. I want to respond, and our team knows. NASA would tell me every now and again, dude, you argue with someone that has like 1 follower. It's like, yeah, but they said something stupid, And so when I'm in those moments, I'm probably operating in my little dinosaur brain, and I'm also in this space where I'm not protecting my own energy because I'm just ready to argue with anybody. And so it's important to then in social media, the news, conversations, that you can set boundaries around that stuff so that you're not just constantly living in this place of anger or frustration or stress or anxiety or depression or all the other things that you can name because you're watching the news 24/7 or you're scrolling through Twitter or Instagram or whatever it is, your social Facebook, and you're reading what all your friends are saying and what their friends' friends are saying and what people you don't even know are saying. And it's all impacting your energy and how you show up first for yourself. And then that impacts your ability to go from the trigger or the stimulus to the pause space because you go right to the response place. I know because that happens to me. And so it's important to set boundaries around that stuff. And then also know that you don't have to engage in every debate. And if there's one thing I like to do, whether I agree with what I'm saying or not, is I like to debate. And, I've told these guys I'm about to find the actual article one day and show it to them where they interviewed my dad and they said, what is one thing that we don't know about Ray? And he said, that kid will argue with a stop sign. And I will convince the stop sign that it says pause, not stop. That's just me. And so, but you have to know that you don't have to engage every debate. And then I'll say number 4 is stay connected to your allies and your support system. So talk to colleagues or people that that understand what the situation is or that can can talk you through what it is that is going on or what it is you're hearing, and then share wins. Find someone to vent and frustrate with. I mean, vent your frustrations with, and then um, remind yourself of the things that are important to you and why they matter. And so the vent frustration part is a big one too, because I have friends that I just call and I just go like, man, I just need a minute, and then I just unload whatever it is. It's not about them. They're just there to be someone that can hear it and deflect it. And maybe they are one of the people that set a boundary and go, you know what, Ray, today I can't do that, and so I have to respect that. But it's important to be able to just kind of to get it out of your system, whether you're venting it to another person or just writing it out. So stay connected to your systems, and then celebrate small wins. And so the small wins don't even have to be connected to the climate and the culture that are going on in our world. It can be, but a small win can be like, man, you said you're going to get up and walk 2 miles a day, and you got up and you did it. Or you said you were going to not drink this month, and you did it. Or you said that you were going to, call your parents and say hello, and you did it. Or that you got up out of the bed, or that you made breakfast, or whatever it is. Like, you can find small wins. And if it's in your work, you can find small wins into that too. Like I said, the rules are telling you what you can't do, but you can find ways to accomplish some of the things you want. And sometimes that comes in the small wins. And then the next one, it would be take breaks without guilt. So it's okay to say, I'm pouring from an empty cup. And I've always said you cannot give what you don't have. And so in order to get those things, you need to recharge, refresh, re-educate, become more aware. Just take the time to do the things that bring you joy. Whether it's going on a walk, taking a couple days and going to the coast, if that's the thing you like to do. I like to go for hikes. I like to spend time with my kids, like those types of things. Like, those are the things that kind of bring me joy, so I can take a break. And then I will say, I know I got a little long list here, but there's 2 more. One is channel your frustration into action. So instead of using frustration as fuel, use it as fuel and not fire. So keep finding ways to do the stuff that you want to do, that is important to you, that's impactful to the community, that you think that people need, that maybe the rules are telling you that they don't. But find your creative brain, get into that space, and find other ways to use your frustration as fuel and not a fire to just burn down the house, because then that doesn't help anybody. And then the last one, and this is more connected to what we're doing and why we have this podcast, is if the weight is if it's impacting your mental health, then reach out to somebody. There are lots of people, lots of resources that are available for you to reach out to someone and get some help. Even if you had to do what I did, where I had to reach out to my ex-wife, who reached out to Sandy Gregory, who was a friend of ours that were from the Seahawks, who knew someone at the NFL that kind of got me connected to the place I needed to go. Do not be afraid to reach out to trusted friends or a trusted person, or go to the Mindful Therapy Group website and contact them to try to find someone that can help you unload some of this of what you're feeling, because you don't have to carry it alone. And then in that, I did a post, I want to say 2 or 3 days ago, where it was saying to check in on your people, because sometimes people carry it well. It looks like they're doing a great job. And those sometimes are the people that need the help the most. But people don't take the time to check in on them because they look like they're doing it well. Like they're handling. I think the image I used was a guy carrying a big boulder over his head. And it's like, yeah, it looks like he's doing it well, but it doesn't mean that the burden and the load isn't heavy. And so those folks need help too. So you don't have to do all that alone. I want to say thank you guys for letting me have these moments and talk about these things. I can be long-winded, and I know I tell a lot of stories and all that kind of stuff, and sometimes I'm not the most direct and concise communicator, but man, this stuff is important to me. And this episode ending here doesn't mean that this work for me isn't ending. It just means I'm taking it to another place, doing some other things. You're still going to be able to find Big Ray's Garage Grind, and we'll make an announcement about when that happens. But like always, I want to close with our 3 things. And one is, it's okay to not be okay. Number 2 is, if you're having a mental health crisis, reach out to your medical providers for assistance. And I think we've shared, and we can share on here some of the numbers you can call for immediate help for like hotlines and things. And then number 3 is that when you need help and you ask for help, you're operating from a position of power. And so I want to again say thank you for listening to me, giving me the space, letting me have this voice in the space, talking to me on the sidewalks, in the stadiums, all those kinds of things. But for this particular episode and this particular function of this episode, this is Big Ray. And this has been Big Ray's Garage Grind. Peace. And I'm out.